The funeral flowers hadn't even started to wilt when I saw the for sale sign on my father's vintage Ford truck. It wasn't parked on the street. It was being loaded onto a flatbed trailer. I stood in the driveway, wearing the same black dress I'd worn to bury him 48 hours ago, and watched my stepmother, Linda, sign a clipboard. She didn't look like a grieving widow. She looked like a CEO closing a merger. When she saw me, she didn't offer a hug. She didn't tear up. She checked her watch. She said, "Maya, perfect timing. I need your key to the lake house. The state agent is coming at noon." I froze. The lake house wasn't just property. It was where my dad and I spent every summer since I was 5. It was where he taught me to fish, to drive, to build things. I told her, "Linda, we haven't even read the will yet." She laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was a dry, pitying sound. She said, "Oh, honey, we don't need to read anything. Your father wanted to make sure his family was taken care of. And, well, you're nearly 30. You can take care of yourself." My hands started shaking, not from grief this time, but from a cold, sharp rage spreading through my chest. The question wasn't whether she was trying to cut me out. The question was, how long had she been planning this? And did she really think I was just going to let her steal my father's legacy without a fight? Here's the thing about my dad, heavy construction magnate Robert Big Rob Sterling. He was a man of details. He built skyscrapers. He checked every rivet, every beam, every permit. He didn't make mistakes with paperwork. And he certainly didn't leave things to chance. That's why, when Linda walked back into the house, my childhood home, and locked the door behind her, I didn't bang on it. I didn't scream. I got in my car, drove 2 blocks down, and pulled over. I needed to think. Dad and I had been close. Inseparable, really, since my mom passed when I was 12. I was his shadow on job sites. By 25, I was a project manager at Sterling Construction. Linda came into the picture 5 years ago. She was an interior designer he hired for a remodel. She was beautiful, polished, and significantly younger than him. Only 10 years older than me. She came with a son, Bryce, who was 20. Dad, being the big-hearted guy he was, welcomed Bryce like his own. He paid for Bryce's college. He bought him a car. He tried to get Bryce interested in the business. But Bryce was more interested in sleeping until noon and promoting nightclubs. I tolerated Linda. I was polite. I thought she made Dad happy. But looking back, there were signs. Red flags I brushed off because I wanted him to not be lonely. Like the way she'd slowly started firing Dad's longtime staff. The housekeeper who'd been with us for a decade, his personal accountant of 20 years, replacing them with her people. Or how she always insisted on sitting in on business meetings she had no qualifications for. I told myself she was just being supportive. I was an idiot. The real discovery, the moment the floor dropped out from under me, happened 3 days later at the lawyer's office. We were sitting in a conference room that smelled like lemon polish and expensive leather. Linda was there, wearing a black veil that looked more like a fashion statement than morning attire. Bryce was there, scrolling on his phone, looking bored. Mr. Henderson, the new lawyer Linda had convinced Dad to hire 6 months ago, cleared his throat. He started reading. Robert Sterling, being of sound mind, I waited for the specific bequests. Dad had always told me, "Maya, the business is yours. You built it with me. The house is yours. Linda gets the insurance and the vacation condo." That was the deal. That was always the deal. Then Mr. Henderson said it. "I hereby leave 100% of my estate, including Sterling Construction, the primary residence, the lake house, and all liquid assets, to my devoted wife, Linda Sterling. To my daughter, Maya, I leave the sum of $5,000, trusting she has the skills to build her own path." $5,000. The room went silent. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner. I could hear Bryce stop tapping on his phone. "Excuse me?" My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. That's not his will. Dad updated his will in 2019. I saw the draft. Linda turned to me, her eyes wide and innocent. "Oh, Maya, he changed it 6 months ago. After, well, after we talked about how much pressure the business was putting on you, he wanted you to be free. Free! I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. He wouldn't cut me out of the company I run. He wouldn't leave the lake house to someone who hates nature. Mr. Henderson slid a document across the table. It's all here, Maya. Signed and notarized. Dated November 14th. I looked at the signature. It was shaky. Weak. November 14th. That date hit me like a physical blow. November 14th was 2 days after Dad's stroke. He was in the ICU. He was barely lucid. He was on enough morphine to knock out a horse. He was in the hospital. I said, my voice trembling. He couldn't have signed this. He was recovering. Linda said smoothly. He was very clear about his wishes. He wanted to secure Bryce's future. He looked at Bryce as the son he never had. That was the dagger. The son he never had. Dad had never, ever made me feel like being a daughter was less than... I looked at Bryce. He had the decency to look away. But Linda? She was staring right at me, defying me to make a scene. I didn't make a scene. I took a picture of the signature page with my phone before Mr. Henderson could snatch it away. I picked up my purse. I looked Linda dead in the eye and said, enjoy the victory lap, Linda, but don't spend the money yet. I walked out, but I didn't go home to cry. I went to the one person Linda didn't know existed in my professional circle, my ex-boyfriend David, who happens to be a forensic accountant. I sat in David's office an hour later, hyperventilating. He poured me a glass of water and looked at the photo of the will. Maya, he said, frowning, look at the witnesses. I leaned in. Sarah Jenkins and Michael Trent. Who are they? David asked. I don't know. I admitted. Not Dad's friends. Not hospital staff. Find out, David said. If he was medicated, he couldn't legally sign. But proving lack of capacity is hard. You need more. You need to prove fraud. I went into detective mode. I took a leave of absence from a construction company, which was easy, since Linda had already sent an email to HR accepting my resignation that I never submitted. I spent the next week digging, and what I found was worse than just a greedy stepmom. It was a conspiracy. Sarah Jenkins wasn't just a random witness. I tracked her down on social media. Her maiden name? Sarah Miller. Linda's maiden name? Miller. She was Linda's estranged cousin from Ohio. Linda had brought her in to witness the will, pretending she was a stranger. That was illegal. Strike one. But the second witness, Michael Trent, he was harder to find. Until I searched criminal records. He was a notary public who had lost his license 3 years ago for fraud. Linda had paid a disbarred notary to validate a will signed by a medicated man and witnessed by her own cousin. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. But it still might not be enough to overturn everything quickly. Courts take years. By the time we fought this, Linda could drain the company accounts, sell the equipment, and disappear. I needed a nuke. I needed something that would destroy her credibility instantly. That's when I remembered the toolbox. Dad had an old red metal toolbox he kept in the garage. Not for work, for his treasures. Old photos, my kindergarten drawings, spare keys. Linda had cleared out the garage, but she had dumped everything into a skip bin in the driveway. I waited until 2 a.m. I put on a hoodie and drove to the house. I parked down the street and crept up the driveway like a criminal at my own home. The skip was full of drywall and trash bags. I climbed in. I dug for 20 minutes, terrified the motion sensor lights would trigger. Then I felt it. The cold, rusted metal handle. I pulled the box out. It was heavy. I took it back to my apartment and pried the lock open with a screwdriver. Inside, it was mostly junk, but taped to the bottom of the tray was a small envelope with my name on it. I opened it. Inside was a key and a note. Maya, if you're reading this, things have gone sideways. I don't trust the new lawyer. Linda is pushing for changes I don't understand. There's a safety deposit box at First National. Box 402. Keep this between us. Love, Dad. First National. That wasn't Dad's usual bank. Linda wouldn't know about it. The next morning, I went to bank. I had the key, and because my name was on the authorized list, Dad must have added me years ago. They let me in. The box contained two things. One, a handwritten will from 6 months ago, explicitly stating that any future wills must be videotaped to be valid, specifically because he feared manipulation due to health. Two, a sealed DNA test report. I frowned. Why would Dad have a DNA test? I opened it. It was dated 4 years ago. A paternity test. Subject, Bryce Miller. Alleged father, Robert Sterling. I stopped breathing. Dad wasn't Bryce's father. Everyone knew that. Bryce was Linda's son from a previous marriage. Why would Dad test for paternity? I read the attached letter from a private investigator. Mr. Sterling, as you suspected, the timeline Mrs. Sterling provided regarding your brief separation and reconciliation 10 years ago does not align. She claimed Bryce was your biological child, conceived during that reunion, but kept it secret until you married. The DNA confirms 0% probability of paternity. She has been using this false claim to pressure you regarding the estate. My jaw dropped. I had never known this. Linda had told Dad that Bryce was a secret son. That's why Dad paid for everything. That's why he felt so guilty. She had lied to him about having a child, manipulated him for years, and he had found out. He must have confronted her. And then he had the stroke. The pieces clicked. The new will relied on the phrase, my beloved son Bryce. If Bryce wasn't his son and Lyndon knew it and Dad knew it, the will was founded on fraud. But I needed to be sure. The DNA test in the box was a copy. To stand up in court, I needed a fresh sample. I needed to prove that Bryce and I shared zero DNA, and more importantly, that Lyndon knew about the lie. I needed to get close to them. I called Bryce. I played the defeated sister. Bryce, look, I'm done fighting. I just want a few things of Dad's from the house. Can we meet for coffee? I want to give you the keys to the office properly. Bryce agreed. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. He was just greedy. We met at a Starbucks. He looked smug. Mom says you're taking it hard, he said, sipping his latte. It's a lot, I said, keeping my hands under the table so he wouldn't see them shaking. But you're the son. You deserve the legacy. Yeah, he said, puffing out his chest. Dad always said I reminded him of himself. I almost vomited. Hey, Bryce, do you mind if I grab a napkin? I went to the counter. When I came back, I watched him finish his drink. I gotta run, he said. Mom's meeting the liquidators at the warehouse. The liquidators? My blood ran cold. They were selling the heavy machinery. That was the heart of the business. Yeah, cash is king, right? He laughed, crumpled his cup, and tossed it towards a trash can. He missed. It fell on the floor. I got it, I said quickly. Whatever. See ya, Maya. He walked out. I picked up the cup. I used a tissue. I put it directly into a Ziploc bag I had in my purse. I drove straight to the lab David had recommended. I need a sibling kinship test.
You knew exactly what you were doing when you transferred that money.
Double. While I waited for the results, it would take 48 hours. I had to stop the liquidation. I called David. File an emergency injunction. Freeze the assets. On what grounds? He asked. Fraud. Forgery. And paternity fraud. I said, I'm sending you a document Dad left in a safety deposit box. The next 48 hours were agony. I sat in my apartment, watching my phone. Linda called me twice. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Maya, I heard you're trying to interfere with the business. If you don't back off, I'll sue you for harassment. You're embarrassing your father's memory. The irony almost made me laugh. The results came in on a Thursday morning. Probability of half-siblingship, 0%. It was concrete. But the kicker was the second document David found. In the new will, there was a clause. In the event of any dispute, I, Robert Sterling, declare that Bryce Miller is my biological issue and heir. Dad would never have written that. He knew Bryce wasn't his. That clause was Linda's insurance policy, inserted because she knew the truth and wanted to legally cement it. It proved she wrote the will, not him. The confrontation happened at the emergency hearing. Linda walked into the courtroom looking like Jackie O. She had 3 lawyers with her. I just had David. Her lead attorney stood up. Your Honor, this is a frivolous attempt by a disgruntled daughter to delay the inevitable. The will is clear. The judge looked at David. Counsel? David stood up. He was calm. Your Honor, we are not contesting the distribution of assets based on preference. We are contesting the validity of the document itself based on proven fraud. Fraud. The judge raised an eyebrow. That's a serious accusation. We have 3 exhibits. David said. Exhibit A. A sworn affidavit from the hospital proving Robert Sterling was heavily sedated on November 14th. Exhibit B. Proof that the witness, Sarah Jenkins, is the beneficiary's cousin, a direct violation of state probate law. Linda shifted in her seat. Her lawyer whispered something to her. She looked annoyed, but not scared yet. And Exhibit C, David continued, a DNA test confirming that the beneficiary, Bryce Miller, is not the biological son of the deceased, contrary to the explicit claims made by Mrs. Sterling to the deceased, and contrary to the text of the will itself. Linda froze. Her face went from porcelain to chalk. She grabbed her lawyer's arm. This is irrelevant, her lawyer shouted. Biology doesn't determine inheritance. It does when the will was forged to cover up a lie. David shot back. And we have one more thing. A holographic will written by Robert Sterling 6 months ago, found in a secure location unknown to Mrs. Sterling, which explicitly disinherits anyone who, and I quote, falsifies paternity or relation to secure funds. The courtroom murmured. The judge looked at Linda. Mrs. Sterling, is it true that you presented your son as the biological child of the deceased? Linda stood up. He loved him. It shouldn't matter. It matters, the judge said, his voice hard, if you tricked a dying man into signing a document based on that lie. Or worse, if you signed it yourself. The judge granted the temporary injunction. He froze everything. The sale of the equipment was stopped. The accounts were locked. But the real victory came 2 weeks later during the deposition. We had them cornered. David grilled the notary, Michael Trent, under threat of perjury, and a return to prison. He flipped. He admitted Linda paid him $10,000 to backdate the stamp. He admitted Dad wasn't even in the room. Linda had forged a signature by tracing it from an old check. It was over. The aftermath was brutal for them and satisfying for me. The new will was declared void ab initio, invalid from the start. The court reverted to the previous valid will, the one Dad wrote in 2019. In that will, Linda got a stipend, a modest monthly allowance for 5 years. That's it. The business? Mine. The house? Mine. The lake house? Mine. But because Linda had attempted fraud, the judge went further. Under the Slayer statute or its equivalent in fraud cases, she was disqualified from receiving any benefits from this state. She got nothing. 0. The day the final ruling came down, I went to the house. Linda was packing. She wasn't using movers this time. She and Bryce were shoving clothes into garbage bags. You happy? She spat at me as I walked into the foyer. You destroyed a family. No, Linda, I said, leaning against the door frame. You destroyed it the day you lied to my dad about his son. You destroyed it when you tried to sell his truck before he was cold. I just turned on the lights. We have nowhere to go, Bryce whined. Mom sold her condo to pay the lawyers. That sounds like a you problem, I said. You have until 5 p.m. Anything left after that belongs to the estate, and the estate belongs to me. I watched them drive away. No vintage truck, just a leased sedan that was probably about to be repossessed. It's been 8 months since that day. I'm sitting in my dad's office, my office now. I kept his old hard hat on the shelf behind the desk. Business is booming. We just landed the contract for the new city library. I rehired the old accountant and the housekeeper. I heard through the grapevine that Linda is living with her sister in Ohio, the one who witnessed the fake will. Apparently, they fight a lot. Bryce is working as a bartender. He tried to reach out to me once, asking for a loan to start a podcast. I blocked his number. Sometimes I think about the money, not the amount, but what it represents. Linda thought the money was a legacy. She thought if she grabbed the cash, She won the game, but she didn't understand builders. We know that if the foundation is rotten, the house comes down. Dad left me a note in that safety deposit box that I didn't show the lawyers. It was just for me. It said, Maya, the smartest tool in the box isn't the hammer. It's the level. Keep things straight, and you'll always be standing. I looked at the DNA test one last time before shredding it. I didn't need a piece of paper to tell me who my family was. I knew who raised me, and I knew who I was fighting for. Linda wanted everything. She wanted the kingdom. But she forgot that you can't steal a throne if you can't wear the crown. My name is Maya Sterling. I'm the CEO of Sterling Construction, and I built this life with my own 2 hands and a little help from the truth.